Good morning, everyone. In today's class, we will be paying attention on custodial violence. So, custodial violence, here I mentioned this as vestiges of colonial past. So, that means still it is the portion still that is continuing from the colonial past. Okay. So, what exactly this custodial violence is all about? The reason why we have taken up this particular issue, as you all know, recently what happened in the state of Tamil Nadu, where both the father-son duo, they both got arrested by the police, and eventual uh, judicial remand. Okay, and after that, torturing both the father and son, and the biggest challenge here is, and then the most worst thing, they both got arrested just because they violated the lockdown rules. Okay. So if they violate the lockdown rules, so at most you can give punishment up to okay, up to 3 years. But eventually, what happened here? Due to the torture caused by the police, so that led to the eventual death of both father and the son. Okay, so it created huge furor in the country. Okay, but here I would like to tell one fundamental difference between what happened in the state of Tamil Nadu in India and what happened in USA with respect to the George Floyd's death, or the one black person's death in the hands of one white policeman. This eventually created a huge debate once again about racism. Okay, but if you see the difference here, when that death took place, see the the extent of civil society activism there. So there were very huge protests. So there were even recommendations to disband the police force or to defund. That means to not provide any funds to the police. Okay. So whereas in the case of India, so we most of the we tried in the social media platforms to express our anger, but we haven't seen much of civil society participation in tackling the issue. So this is the fundamental difference we have to observe with respect to the American way of dealing the issue and the Indian way of dealing the issue. Okay. So now to understand the whole custodial violence, okay, and especially the custodial deaths. So let us first try to understand the various dimensions of custodial violence. So first of all, what exactly custodial violence means? Custodial violence, see, if you take violence, violence is actually of two types. One is physical, second one is non-physical. The non-physical is what we call as mental violence. So that means without hurting the individual, you will just mentally harass the individual. So when you hurt the body, when you hurt any of the body parts of the individual, then what we call that as the physical violence. So physical and non-physical. Non-physical means here mental violence. Mental means you will harass the individual with your strong words. Okay, you will use the racial slur, or you will use caste-related discriminations, or you will use gender-related discriminations. So in that way, you will be harassing the individual. Okay, so this is what we call as mental violence. So it can be mental or physical violence if it takes either in judicial or police custody. So first police custody, after taking permission from the judiciary will provide remand. So this is what happened in the case of these two, the father and son duo death in Tamil Nadu. Judiciary, even the local judiciary, without even checking for what purpose the case is all about, the police is seeking the remand. It simply granted remand for judicial custody. Okay, and it provided an option for the police, okay, to take them into custody. Okay, so this is what we call as custody. So the violence that took place either in the judicial custody or in the police custody. Police custody means first before submitting to the court. Okay, because before taking permission from the judicial remand, the police custody will be there. Okay, after that, the judicial custody will be coming. So this custodial violence is actually, you can divide into three types. One is torture, second one is rape, third one is eventual death. Okay, torture, rape, and eventual death. So what exactly the difference among these three? Okay, if you take the case of torture, okay, torture means what exactly here? Causing of a severe pain. So causing of a severe pain, either mental or physical. Okay, so intentionally, okay, for the very purpose of either to obtain information, okay, or to compel the individual to confess. We will be telling the individual that you have to confess that you did the mistake. So you did the crime. Or else sometimes what we do, give me the information. You have to provide him the information. Until you provide the information, I will torture you. I will use first degree, second degree, third degree. How many degrees I know? All the degrees I use. B.Tech, M.Tech, this tech, that tech, all the techs. I'm just kidding here. So I hope you understood. So torture means what here? According to the United Nations Convention Against Torture, the 1997 convention, if you see, so torture means causing a severe pain, okay, to the individual, okay, to obtain information or to compel the individual to confess. So this is what is called as torture. Okay, in India also we have sections, we have this IPC section 330. IPC section 330 deals with torture. Okay, so in that, in the torture we discussed about two information. One is with respect to harassing, what you call harassing to obtain information, voluntarily hurting the individual. Second one is compelling the individual to confess and confining the individual. What you do here, you will confine, you will take the individual into your custody and you will not inform to anybody. Okay, so there is another section in the IP, section 348. So section 348 deals with wrongful confinement. So if you confine the individual without informing him or her for the reason for which they got confined. So here we have this punishment under section 348 of IPC. So these we will discuss in the latter screens and the latter slides. So in simple terms, torture means this is what? Causing severe pain, mental or physical, to get information or to compel the individual to confess. Second one is rape. So when the word rape comes, sometimes there is a debate actually going on. Rape also one type of torture. So that is true. But most of the women activists, what they say is like, we should use only the word rape rather than using the word torture, because rape is having a lot of what you call significance. Okay, in the society, the word rape got huge significance. That's why we should continue with the word rape. Though rape can be considered as one type of torture, but where the fundamental difference lies is that here, unlawfully, without the individual's permission, what you're doing here, you're forcing the individual to do the sexual activity. Okay, so that's what. So the unlawful sexual activity, so on the against the will of the individual, is what we call as rape. Okay, and the third is death. So the eventual death of the individual. So this is what the three types of the custodial violence. The custodial violence can be a custodial torture, custodial rape, or custodial death. Okay, so where what happened with respect to these two, the father son due in Tamil Nadu is the custodial death due to the custodial torture. Due to the custodial torture, committed by the police eventually led to the custodial death. Okay, so this is the recent issue as we just discussed. Sadankulam in Tamil Nadu. Okay, so now let us come to the data. Let us get some information with respect to custodial violence in the country. So when it comes to getting the information about crimes, so we have a body to deal with this. The name of the body is National Crime Records Bureau, NCRB. So NCRB, every year it releases reports on what you call this with respect to prisons, with respect to crimes. So with respect to all the crimes in the country, National Crime Records Bureau annually will release the reports. Okay, so in that there are two specific reports. Those reports are very much relevant when it comes to the custodial violence. So those two reports, as I mentioned here, one is Prison Statistics 2017 and the second one is Crimes in India 2017. So here they collected the data up to 2017 and this particular report got released in the month of October 2019. So this is the latest available data with respect to custodial violence in the country. Okay, so this is the report released last year by the National Crime Records Bureau. So it actually released two reports. One is, as I mentioned here, prison statistics in the country 2017 and the second one is Crimes in India that you will be seeing in the next screen. So if you see the prison statistics, so the number of prisoners, so here because we are discussing about violence, so here I have taken only those specific points. So if you see the number of prisoners, around more than 1600 prisoners, to be specific 1671 prisoners, they have died in the judicial custody. Again, when it comes to death, death is actually of two types, natural and unnatural. So natural death means we have, suppose for example, they might be suffering with chronic diseases, okay, or with fever or with any other natural cause. Unnatural means suicides. So this is the concern for us. So natural deaths are not of our concern. The concern is unnatural deaths. What are the unnatural deaths? So in the report, if they mention that this individual committed suicide in the jail cell or due to the accident, what kind of accident? Another individual who came and thrashed this individual. Who was the another individual? The individual was mentally weak. So this is what happened with respect to the death of Muddisinu in connection with the Parital Ravi murder case. When Muddisinu was in jail, okay, another person came with a heavy weight. He thrashed the head of Muddisinu, one of the culprits. Okay, but in the report, what they mentioned, this individual, the individual who thrashed Muddisinu was mentally weak. Okay, so with these kinds of, so we do not know whether it's really true or not. We do not know, but these kind of reasons they raise questions. Okay, so these unnatural deaths, if you clearly see the statistics, this is important for us. They are actually getting increased. At least if you take it from the past few years, the number of deaths due to the unnatural reasons, they're actually getting increased. Here I also mentioned the percentage. Okay, so 15% rise in the category of unnatural deaths in the judicial custody. So this is the data we have taken from Prison Statistics 2017 released by the National Crime Records Bureau. So this showcases there is something somewhere is not properly right while we are dealing with the prisoners. Okay, so this is with respect to the first report, Prison Statistics 2017, and the data they mentioned with respect to the number of custodial deaths. Next one is, this is with respect to the crimes in the country. Okay, so number of people who actually died in the police custody. So first one is with respect to prisons. Second one is with respect to this police custody. So if you see here, in the year 2017, around 100 people died. In that year, the more number of deaths actually took place in the state of Andhra Pradesh. Okay, that for that specific year. But if you take cumulatively from the past 4 years, 2013 to 2017, highest number of deaths actually took place in Maharashtra. After Maharashtra, we have this Andhra Pradesh, Gujarat, Tamil Nadu, and Telangana. So these are the states where the highest number of custodial deaths took place. The police custodial deaths. Okay, but again, if you see the most interesting, the most common form of this custodial violence, the custodial deaths, encounters. Okay, deaths like encounters, and sometimes they will mention this illegal detentions, torture. These are the most common form of human rights violations in the police custody. Okay, so these are the most common form. So that are happening. At the same time, these deaths are also getting increased. There are some specific states here, as I mentioned, some states like Maharashtra, Andhra Pradesh, Gujarat, Tamil Nadu, Telangana. There, the number of deaths we have seen more. It does not mean in the other states the deaths are not taking place. At least in these states, the deaths are reporting. So this is what you have to observe. So do not think like in states like Bihar, Uttar Pradesh, and some of other Rajasthan, something like that. There, the deaths are not happening. At least in these states, the deaths are getting reported. So with that reason, we are coming to know. There are situations where they won't even report. We have those situations also. Okay. So this is with respect to crimes in India, and in that the category is this police custody. What are the number of deaths? What kind of human rights violations will be committed by the police during these kind of deaths? As we mentioned here, encounters, custodial death in the custody, illegal detentions, and all those. Okay, so next is now to come to the point. What are the issues with custodial violence? Why still there is a continuous existence of custodial violence in the country? So this is the point. So here I got some 7 points. 4 points with respect to us and 3 more specific points. So these 7 points will be sufficient with respect to the issues concerning the custodial violence. So definitely here, as we mentioned, if you take the case of torture. Okay. So torture, specifically the term torture, there is no criminal provision with respect to that. That means we do not have a specific law to deal with torture. We have some section somewhere in the IPC. Okay, but we do not have the what you call specific law to deal with the torture. Okay, so there is no proper specific law. Suppose, for example, if you take the case of sexual harassment of women at workplace. With respect to sexual harassment of women at workplace, okay, so we have a specific law with respect to that. So right now, with respect to rape, we have a specific law. We have this Nirbhaya Act. Okay, but when it comes to torture, there is no one specific statutory provision or the statutory backup to deal with torture. So this is the first most important point we have to. That's what I mentioned here. Torture is not criminalized in law as a separate offense. So we will just combine this with other factors, but we are not discussing this as a separate category. And as I mentioned previously, Section 330 and Section 348. Section 330 deals with like what you call Section 330 means hurting the individual. Section 348 deals with wrongful confinement. If you had the individual, what should be the punishment? If you wrongfully confine the individual, what should be the punishment? Okay, so these are the two sections. One is hurting the individual, voluntarily hurting the individual, section 330 of IPC. Second one, section 348. So it deals with wrongfully confining the individual. So for these two sections, for these two provisions, we have two sections. But the biggest thing is, there is no provision where it got mentioned that what are the provisions for punishment if it is committed by the police officer, because most of the custodial deaths took place in the hands of the police. So though we have the section 330 and section 348 of the IPC deals with indirectly about torture, but these sections also nowhere mentioned about the punishment for police officials for violating these sections. So because there is no clear mention of there's no clear mention in these sections with respect to the violence committed by the police, so it's providing a carefree hand for the police. So they will come, sometimes they will commit these kind of crimes, but they cannot be caught because in the law we do not have any one specific provision to deal with the custodial violence caused by the police officials. Okay, even if you take the case of collecting the evidence, we have the India Evidence Act 1872. So right now, for all the evidences in the country, we will be following the India Evidence Act. Before the police collecting the crime scene evidence, they actually follow the procedure in the procedure that got mentioned in the India Evidence Act 1872. Okay, the Colonial Act still we are continuing, but in this also, okay, so there is no provision that actually mentioned is with respect to torture. So with respect to torture, what should be the procedure? In what way they have to collect the information? Nowhere it got mentioned. Okay, so this is what the Law Commission actually demands. Law Commission actually demands a specific section for torture in the India Evidence Act. So it demands section 114B, 114B. So it demands to insert a new section in the India Evidence Act 1872 so that they can also collect information against torture. Okay. So along with that, you know, previously we used to have TADA and POTA. TADA came in 1980s. We ended that in 1995 after we ended the violence in Punjab region. TADA, terrorist, TADA, Terrorist and Disruptive Activities Act. Second one is POTA, the 2002 one, Prevention of Terror Activities. Though both the acts actually right now were repealed, one got repealed in 95, another got repealed in 2004, the TADA, TADA, Terrorist and Disruptive Activities. Second one is POTA, Prevention of Terrorism Act. Though we repealed both the acts, in those acts, actually previously when the acts were there used to be a provision. Police, when they detain the individual under these two acts, can torture the individual, okay, either to confess or to get information. So that means state itself openly allowed the police, okay, to torture the individual. You may raise one question here, because these two acts dealing with the antisocial elements. So with respect to antisocial elements, the state has to use a bit of violence to get the information. So in this way, the state actually justifies. But what these human rights activists are arguing is like, okay, whatever it should be, it actually is actually violating ultimately the human rights. It is violating the rights of the prisoner. Okay. So you might have cheated for 10 rupees or 100 rupees or 1000 rupees or 1000 crores. So for how much rupees you cheat, but still it's a cheat under section 420. So this is what human rights violation says, the human rights activist says. So though we repeal those two acts, but right now the flavor that was mentioned in these two acts, so that is right now present in the this MOCA. MOCA means Maharashtra Control of Organized Crimes Act, the 2016 Act. Okay, so in this act right now we have, again, the very purpose of this act is to control the organized crime. Okay, so for that purpose, so previous also in one of the previous classes we discussed about what is organized crime. Okay, so in this act also right now there are certain provisions that got mentioned with respect to torture. If requires, police may go for the police may torture the individual to get the required information or to compel the individual to confess. Okay, again, you know, right against torture, not a fundamental right. And if you see witness protection, we have very weak witness protection mechanism in the country. How the witness should be protected? Do we have any law? No. And when it comes to audit, we are not appropriately using the technology. A lot many lapses in auditing the crime scene. This is what we call forensic audit. Forensic audit means audit by all the individuals, police, lawyers, doctors. So all will provide their inputs. Eventually, we will come up with a final solution to the crime, the crime that took place in a given place. Okay, so these all are the issues with custodial violence. So to deal with custodial violence, Supreme Court in the year 1996, initially one PAL will be filed. Okay, so one PAL, public interest litigation, will be filed in the year 1996 by this D.K. Basu. So in the D.K. Basu versus State of West Bengal case, so it's the most famous case with respect to custodial violence, especially torture. Supreme Court provides actual 11 guidelines. Okay, if you want, you can see all the 11 guidelines. Here also I mentioned a few guidelines. The guidelines that are mentioned by the Supreme Court, along with both statute and constitutional provisions. Okay, so Supreme Court in this D.K. Basu case actually provided 11 guidelines. Okay, so what are these 11 guidelines? So these 11 guidelines you can just see here. I didn't provide all the guidelines. Okay, you just remember few of the guidelines, then you'll understand. Okay, so very simple guidelines mean these are actually very basic guidelines. What is the first one? If you see here, if any police official, when they are going for the investigation, before starting the the process, before starting the interrogation, sorry, previously I mentioned investigation, not investigation, interrogation. Before starting the investigation against the individual who was taken into custody, the police also must mention their name. Who are they? What's their level in the hierarchy? Okay, they should mention all the details. So there should be on record mentioning of who are the police officials who are interrogating the individual who was taken into custody. Okay, second point, when the police officials arrest the individual, there should be a memorandum of arrest. That means when the individual got arrested, okay, at what time the individual got arrested, all the details has to be mentioned. Okay, at the same time, why the individual got arrested. Okay, yeah, so suppose for example, if you take the case of preventive detention, under preventive detention, the police won't be informing the individual before arresting him or her, because police has the right to arrest. Without a warrant, they can go and arrest the individual. They won't even inform to him or her for the grounds on which they got arrested. Okay, but what the Supreme Court mentions here, the individual who got arrested, they have the right to know. They should know for the reasons for which they got arrested. And the time, place, the name of the place of the custody, okay, place of the detention. So all those things has to be mentioned in the case diaries. The police has to file, the police has to maintain a case diary. So in that, all these details has to be mentioned. Okay, and providing medical examination before taking any information against the individual, you have to allow the individual to go under the medical examination. After going through the medical examination, as per the report given by the doctor, you have to take action. So this is what mostly we see in the movies. The doctors will come and if the person is influential, what the doctors will come and say, according to the so and so reports, this individual cannot speak right now, so that you cannot take any action against him. So this is actually the loophole. But the biggest challenge is it will be misused by the people who are in power. But when it comes to the common people, they don't have the chance. Okay. And if you clearly observe all these points, like copies of all the documents has to be mentioned, and within 12 hours, you have to communicate the details of the detainee to the police control room, and there should be a display of there should be a display of the individual's detail in the notice board. So all these points, Supreme Court actually wants just to maintain transparency in the interrogation process. While interrogating the individual, there should be a maintenance of transparency. But the challenge right now is, as we do not have any legislation, there is no specific legislation to deal with the torture, all these guidelines have become just guidelines on the paper. Because police officials knows the tricks, in what way they have to conduct, in what way they have to get away without getting any punishment. But here, if you see from the other side, what is the justification given by the police official is that if you do not come with this kind of interrogative techniques, it ultimately questions the very survival. Okay, the very survival of the organization. So that's why sometimes we have to go with these strict procedures. Okay, so this is another argument given by the police. Okay, the argument given by the police to a maximum extent might be right, but at the same time, there should be some kind of difference between, okay, harassment and getting the information. There should be some new technique that you should follow. Use more of technology, go for the DNA analysis, use more sophisticated methods, use the modern lie detector lie detector techniques. So this is what we have to demand. Yes, the argument mentioned by the police is 100% correct. So before to get the information, sometimes you have to create fear to the individual. So in that case, some of the police officials may go to some other, like to a maximum extent to cause physical violence. Okay, so this is where what the scholars are arguing is like. So in this age right now, we have a lot many new technologies to get the information from the individual, and a lot of new way of processes, like this DNA process, this DNA analysis. But still, the police are not adopting that. So there, the mistake is also there from the police side, not upgrading themselves, not learning the new methods of getting information. So these are the guidelines and some issues in implementation of these guidelines. Okay. Next is with respect to conventions. Do we have any conventions or bills or anything with respect to the custodial violence? Yes, we do have a convention at the United Nations level. What that convention is called as United Nations Convention Against Torture 1997. This is the UN convention. But when it comes to India, though we signed the convention, but we did not ratify that. Because you know the difference between signing and ratification. Signing means government will go and sign the convention. Ratification means it should be approved by the parliament. Okay. So the government in the sense here, the president will be in the name of the president. The convention will be signed, but to get an approval, you need the permission of the parliament. So Indian Parliament did not allow the agreement to be implemented, the convention to be implemented. So this is where comes the word ratification. We signed, but we did not ratify it. Okay. So if you see here, why India did not ratify this particular convention, the arguments mentioned by India is that if we ratify the convention, then first of all here, above the national law, the United Nations law will be coming, first point. And second thing, every year, okay, as an extension to the first point, it may compromises our sovereignty, our independent decision-making process, because above us, United Nations will be there. United Nations will impose the restrictions, what we have to do, because we are part of the convention. United Nations will say what we have to do. Second point, every year you have to submit data to the United Nations. If you do not submit, you will be criticized. If you submit, then also you will be criticized. So even if you submit with submission or without submission, you will be criticized. So why I should be facing criticism? At the same time, we know there are lot many issues when it comes to custodial violence in the country. So with that reason, though we signed the convention initially, we did not ratify that. There are civil society organizations like People's Union for Civil Liberties, PUCL, People's Union for Civil Liberties, and some other non-governmental organizations like Amnesty International and all. They're actually demanding for ratification of this particular convention. Because once you ratify, you will be responsible. Every year you have to submit the reports. Then you will be very much careful to deal with the custodial violence. But government is not ready yet. Okay. At the same time, there is no right to know. There is no right to know with respect to the custodial deaths in the country. Okay. At the same time, as I mentioned here, Law Commission also in its 273rd report. See, in its 273rd report, this Law Commission actually recommended for the creation of a anti-torture law in the country. Okay, it wants that particular law, but the government is not yet ready. Law Commission recommended that in its 273rd report, Law Commission actually recommended for the creation of a anti-torture law, but the government is not yet ready. Government actually came in the year 2010. It's though this particular bill was criticized because this bill also contains lot many vague lines, because not much of clarity. But this bill also could not be fructified. The reason, in the year 2014, with the end of the 15th Lok Sabha, because the bill was introduced in Lok Sabha and it was not passed by Rajya Sabha, the bill got lapsed. Because any bill, if it got passed by Lok Sabha and did not approved by Rajya Sabha, then it will be lapsed. That's what happened in the year 2014. After 2014, the bill got lapsed, and there are no arguments or no discussions with respect to coming up of a new bill. Okay. So this is with respect to conventions or bills against torture. Next is police reforms. See, with respect to this particular topic, for some of the students I have taken the topic in detail, but again, by taking this into point, I will be taking another class on police reforms, because here we have to discuss in detail about the National Police Commission, also called the Dharmavira Commission, and Malamuth Committee, and this Prakash Singh versus Union of India guidelines, the 2006 guidelines. Okay, so because ultimately what we need is the police reforms. So these points that mentioned in in these commissions. So we have Julia Ruber. With respect to police reforms, so we will be discussing specifically about these three: the Dharmavir Commission, Malamuth Committee, and Prakash Singh versus Union of India 2016. Okay, so this we will be discussing in a separate class. Okay, so that's the reason I'm not discussing much about it, because in Prakash Singh guidelines also the Supreme Court mentions it provides total seven guidelines, 7 points. So with respect to the tenure, with respect to the registration of complaints. Okay. So even in the Malamat committee also the court mentions like some of the points mentioned by the Malamat committee in the Malamat in its report, some of the points are actually good, some of the points are actually controversial. Suppose, for example, it says like we have a point called as, if you know that if there is beyond the reasonable doubt. Suppose, for example, you know the word the beyond the reasonable doubt. Suppose on a given particular issue, still there is some, there is a benefit of doubt. If there is a benefit of doubt, then in those cases, you should be very much careful if there is a benefit of doubt. Okay, but here in the Malamat committee, it recommends that when it comes to those kind of issues, we should hand over the power to the district superintendent of police to tackle those kind of cases. Okay, at the same time, it also provides some rights to the people who are into the police custody. Okay, it recommends broader compensation. As of now, we do not have any compensation, not much of compensation with respect to the custodial violence. It recommends more compensation for that. So like that, we have a detailed information. So I thought we can discuss in a separate class about police reforms. So that's the reason I'm just touching as a passing reference. I'm not discussing in details about police reforms. Okay. So finally, so we are concluding here in what way we should be, like what should be the way to reduce the custodial violence. Everything, you know, first and foremost thing, the DK Basu guidelines has to be implemented. That is the first and foremost point. And what do we need is police reforms. Along with that, what you need finally is the civil society participation. Here, that's why in the starting of the class, I gave the example of this, what happened in Delhi, what happened in India, and what happened in America. See, in America, so there was a lot of like people started protesting against this death of George Floyd. But the same did not took place in India. To what extent we protested? Protest, at least the peaceful protest. We showed some sympathy just by posting one message in the Facebook or any other social networking sites. Okay, my deepest condolences. Rest in peace. Because these are the messages we know. But to what extent we tried? To what extent the Indian civil society, okay, pressurize the government. So this is the biggest the challenge right now, the civil society participation. Until the civil society participates, you will not get a solution for these kind of issues. Okay, so that's why the civil society participation, in the sense of participation by the media, participation by the non-governmental organizations, and any other voluntary organizations, student groups. Okay, so they should come. So participation in the sense of democratic, non-violent participation. Okay, there should be a dialogue, there should be a discussion. Okay, so the government should be answerable. You should make the government to answerable. Okay, so if you follow in this way, then at least we will not be seeing the repetition of the recent kinds of incidents, because it's very unfortunate, highly unfortunate. Okay, so with that note, so I will be concluding this particular session. When it comes to police reforms, that I will be taking up in the another session. Okay, so with that, I am ending the topic. Thank you.